Hello, hello, hello. Hey, everybody. Let me just make sure I purposefully did not do the musical introduction today, but just boom, jumped right into it. There we are. All right, good. It looks like I can hear and see myself, so I'm going to assume y'all can see and hear me as well. And we're getting right into it. And the reason for that, this is a completely spontaneous. I just thought of it last night because I was inspired by another YouTube creator that I follow, Vlad Vexler, who did this this question and answer video about himself, and I thought, I want to do that. That's a good idea. I have people come and go on my channel, and people come to hear me talk about cults and Scientology and things like that. And I have never really, I've talked about myself in terms of stories. I've answered lots and lots of questions about myself over the years, but I've never done a show. Who the hell am I? What am I about? Where am I coming from? And so people get bits and pieces in my Q&As, and I've got like over 500 of those things. So nobody's going to sit and watch 500 plus Q&A shows or hundreds of videos to try to figure some guy out. So I thought, well, maybe I should just do some kind of like, hey, get to know you sort of a thing. And so here we are. I hope that the sound is going to be okay, and I intend for this to be a relatively short and to the point sort of thing. So here we are. And sorry for, I was thinking about wearing one of my, new revised Hawaiian shirt wardrobe today, but this one seemed a little bit more appropriate. This is my sort of V for Vendetta ideas or bulletproof shirts, because this is kind of more closer to me and the way I think about things. And so I thought it might be an appropriate thing to wear today. But you will definitely be seeing more of my Aloha shirts. So here we go. Let's just go ahead and get right to it. Apparently these questions come from, let's flip over here. The other reason why I didn't do the whole music intro and everything is because I just recently found out, in trying to find out why it is that I can't do a live chat replay during my Q&As or a lot of my videos where I've gone live. It's because I go back and I edit them after the live is done. I will cut out the whole musical intro portion, and just so people, when they turn on the video, they can get right to the content and not have to fast forward through that whole little intro section. But when you do that, you don't get the live chat replay. And so rather than show it up on the screen today, I thought I would, if anybody wants to see what the chat is saying while the video was going, then they'll be able to turn that on and watch that. So just a little change up there. Yes, I don't know you. Not too much. I know a little bit about your demographics, but I don't know you personally. But anyway, here we go. Let me go over to this screen here. And there are these 35 questions that I'm going to go over today, come out of a Vanity Fair article from 2011. Is apparently where they are sourced from, and I thought they were interesting, and I put them all here, and you'll see them come up on the screen one at a time as we go through them. But I've tried not to think too hard about my answers until now. So here we go. Question 1: what is your idea of perfect happiness? I don't know that there is such a thing as perfect happiness, but I was actually, interestingly enough, I was talking to Mel, my wife, last night about happiness. And there's this definition in Scientology that my mind gravitates towards still now about happiness. Hubbard describes happiness as the overcoming of not unknowable barriers to achieve a goal, right? And conceptually, thematically, I agree with that in a way, but I would develop it a little bit more maybe because happiness is a transient state. It's not a place that you live. It's not a condition that you strive for constant, permanent residency in. I think if you were always happy, and I think it's clear. I think it's important in answering this that I be clear about what I mean by happiness, because I'm a pretty happy guy, a lot, or more than not. At least I hope. I like to think that I am. But happiness is not awe or bliss or endless joy. I don't see it that way. I see happiness as more tuned into satisfaction or accomplishment and the sort of joy maybe that you get from that. The overcoming of barriers or challenges, and what I was talking with Mel about that ended up kind of clarifying it a little bit was the idea that challenges can be short, medium, or long term. That there can be different time periods involved with it, and that sometimes we can set ourselves up for unhappiness by trying to make things happen too fast. And maybe the challenges that we're facing or the goal we're trying to go after is a longer term thing, or we need to adjust our thinking to make it a longer term thing because we're only causing ourselves misery and anxiety trying to get to something that we just aren't capable of at a quick rate. I mean, when you were 24 years old, running up that mountain was a lot easier or a different kind of challenge than when you're 55. And your heart's not quite so good, your legs are not quite so strong, and it's going to take you a little bit longer to get to the top of that mountain, to achieve that level of accomplishment and happiness, right? And I think about these things when I think about my idea of perfect happiness. Now, as far as, maybe another way of looking at this question might be, what is the thing that would give me perfect happiness, or what goals or what kind of things would I like to accomplish? Certainly helping people. I've said this many times, is my sweet spot in life, is the place where I really feel most useful and helpful, right? And feel like I'm accomplishing something. And so I guess if I thought of, but there's but if I were to say, so my perfect happiness is, is a place where I'm always helping people. Well, no, because the other thing about, me certainly as a human being is that I change from moment to moment, just like, and I think all of us do. So I don't want to get into a doldrum or a repetitiveness, you know what I mean? I think novelty is important for me too. So I think perfect happiness for me is a place where I'm navigating life in a way that I can be most useful and helpful to people without that being the thing that determines my value as a human being, that my existence and the fact that I just am, and I'm having this life and living the life I want to live, that should be enough. It shouldn't be, and it's not good enough if I'm not fill in the blank, or if I'm not helping 5 people a day, then somehow, I'm not worthy, or I'm not worth anything, or I can't be happy. I wouldn't want to position or talk about it that way. But that being said, the thing that gives me the most joy and happiness is when I can bring some level of knowledge and awareness or perception or change of mind and accomplishment to other people. That's really what brings me happiness. So yeah, so I'll put it that way. Okay, good. Um, Next question. What is your greatest fear? Um, I'm almost afraid to say it because I don't want somebody to use it against me. But the thing that gives me nightmares, truly nightmares, and terrifies me is a claustrophobic feeling of being buried alive or being put into a prison cell of, a very small, very enclosed space. Suffocation, it terrifies me. Drowning doesn't bring the same thing to mind. It's not the loss of breath. It's the closed in sort of, I think, yeah, I think being buried alive is along the lines of my greatest fear. It's not something I ever imagine is actually going to happen to me, but it's a question, and it's where my mind goes immediately. And there have been nightmares around that idea, and it's something that has, I can actually feel a physical reaction when I think about it too hard or start imagining it. And I don't know where it comes from. I remember when I was a kid that there were times when I would get dunked in the pool or bullied. And sat on when somebody would like sit on me. Kids will like force each other down to the ground and then they'll like sit on, and there's this like suffocating feeling. I guess that's might be where it comes from. What is the trait you most deplore in yourself? Oh, I have an idea of how I can do this. Let me pop that out so I can go over here and put that there so I can still see your chats while I'm answering these questions. This is a tough one for me. I don't deplore myself. I don't hate myself or think about I think about my shortcomings, for sure. I think we all do. But deplore is a strong word, like, oh, I hate this about myself. I was thinking along the lines of my ADHD. I really don't like it. I really don't like having that condition. If I could change, something that would probably be near the top of the list, because it's so difficult to live with sometimes, as a thing. The randomness of my emotional state or my mental ability to focus, to take advantage of my faculties, right? And to be able to name a goal and then be able to work on it and just have that simple thing. It sounds so simple. But there's a lot of people, me included, who don't, that's not always how our life goes, moment to moment, hour to hour, day to day. The hyper focus, absolutely, Mimi. The hyper focus absolutely can be a superpower, but it's random and it is temporary. You hyper focus on something knowing that in a day, 2, 3, a week or 2 at most, this isn't going to be that big of an interest to you anymore. And it's a super big interest right now, doing this thing or and when it's something that is something that is good for you, or potentially going to bring you some return on investment, there's this sort of dread of, oh, when am I going to not be interested in this again? And I hate that. I hate that. So I guess I deplore that about myself. Um, what is the trait you most deplore in others? Um, Cruelty. I didn't think of that answer till just now. I was thinking of other things, but that's the one I think. Cruelty. Purposeful, intentional cruelty is something that I despise in other people because I don't think there's any valid, rational reason for it. Um, it's not justifiable. It's not sensible. And it's not even emotionally rationalized, justifiable. Senseless cruelty, Even if you had to sequester some psychotic person or some criminal element, you don't have to be cruel while you're doing that, But there are people, so many people, way too many people. I hate how many people who feel that is like in their core, they really feel like, yeah, that kind of whet their appetites on other people who are not the willing recipient of it. I'm not talking about, some kind of mutual, I don't know, some BDSM thing or something, which frankly I think is a little weird. I think it's weird that people want to be hurt and think that that's something that's fun. But I don't deplore that. If that's your thing, okay. But I think needless cruelty. Yeah, I think I've said enough about that. What living person do you most admire? This is a tough one for me because it's most admire, right? It's like I got to nail one person because there's a lot of people I admire. So it's hard for me to put all my eggs into one basket on that. I think about people in the ex-cult space, survivors, people who've come before, but, we're talking about living people. I admire people like John Atack. I admire people like Steve Hassan. There are things about them that are human that I don't admire. I recognize they are human beings, and we all have our faults. And things that there isn't any one person I think that is flawless and passes every test. And I think this is where, just to say it out loud, I think this is where a lot of us on the liberal left really lose the plot. That we demand perfection out of our leaders or out of our heroes or something. It seems that there's this inability to recognize that all people are flawed. And that whole thing, never meet your heroes. No, I want to meet my heroes. But let's recognize that they're people. But I would have said when he was still alive, I would have said, Fred Rogers. I would have said Carl Sagan. Unfortunately, neither one of them are with us anymore. Those two people are the closest people to sainthood as human beings that I would give that label to, that I know of, and know something about. But unfortunately, they're not around. I guess I'm going to end up saying my wife. Not because of any one thing, but because she is truly the person that I admire more than anybody else. So I guess I'll have to say that, as far as a living person. What is your greatest extravagance? Lego. I've spent too much money on Lego over the years. I haven't bought anything in a while, but because I don't have a, I ran out of space to put things. Um, I mean, I can look right over there, and I, I mean, it's all around the house. Probably shouldn't have spent the money that I spent on that, but I really enjoy the creation of it. It's not just having a model on a shelf. It's, because sometimes I'll pull them down and take them apart and put them back together again. It's the building and the creation of it that is fun for me. What is your current state of mind? I was thinking about this one too. This is a tough one because I can go lots of ways with it. Because I have a lot of different things happen with me throughout the day in terms of state of mind. I'm anxious about the world a lot, too much. I know that. I know that the anxiety of current events and the world bother me a lot more than it bothers other people. And I see myself as an outlier in that regard. I know a lot of people are concerned about themselves in the world. They're, I don't mean to paint with too broad a brush and say everybody out there who's anxious right now is only anxious for selfish reasons, but I think the majority of people who are feeling a lot of concern and anxiety right now are doing so out of a kind of selfishness. Whereas my anxiety has been around for a long time, watching various things happen in the world and feeling powerless to stop it, and speaking out and still feeling powerless to change anything about the current course of humanity bothers me so much. So that's a big part of my state of mind, is the worry about that. I'm not worried about myself in the world. I've been through some shit, I know I can survive harsh things. When you do an RPF program, you learn that about yourself. And getting through that program, as I've said, before, is something I still feel pride and accomplishment in. I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy it happened to me. But at the same time, it taught me things about myself that I am happy that I know, and contribute to a state of mind for me of a sense of self and security in myself, in my ability to my confidence in my ability to survive hard things that I know a lot of people don't have. Until you get tested, you don't know. And you can tell yourself all kinds of fantasies about how you'd react in emergencies, or how you'll react in, if somebody pointed a gun at you, or if somebody, wanted to fight you, or if you were in prison, you tell yourself how you think you would act, but then it happens, and then you get to really find out. And I've seen very, very tough people fold, absolutely fold. And those were the people who would have been the first in, oh no, I'm the alpha here. I know exactly, blah, 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 I'm the tough guy. Turns out, when the rubber met the road, they weren't. So appearances and all of that, and the added, and the sort of fake or toxic, if you will, sort of tough guy thing, strongman approach, doesn't impress me in any way, right? It's experience that tells the tale. And so I think this contributes to my frame of mind. Yeah, exactly, Fu Kitchen. Your comment there about Steve is exactly on point with what I was saying. Exactly. I'm well aware. What I admire about him is not any of that, right? It's the fact that It's the accomplishment of his professional life, maybe prior to a lot of that crap, you know. But getting back to this question, so anyway, I have anxiety and stress and worry about the state of the world and the state of where we take ourselves, you know, collectively. But when I pull in my flippers from that, and I can just look at my life and my relationship with my wife and my family and my friends, I am so thankful. So thankful. And happy. And I get a warm, fuzzy feeling when I think about the love that I have for, you know, my immediate friends and family. I get a warm, fuzzy feeling when I see joy and happiness in the world. And that contributes to my state of mind that there is hope. I'm hopeful, even in the face of you know, democratic decline and the things we talk about on this channel all the time, all the dark side of people. I have to balance that with puppy videos. And, you know, I saw a video yesterday on Reddit of some little girl with her father, and he was this big hulking kind of, you know, guy, and he's sitting there playing with his daughter, and the little girl looks up at him and goes, "You're my best friend," you know, and she goes back to coloring, and he's wiping tears away, you know. I mean, from a guy you would never imagine would be reacting that way, right? I get all teary-eyed just thinking about it right now. I'm a sop, you know. I'm a total sop when it comes to that stuff. So that's, you know, that's kind of all the mix of my current state of mind. Is it's a balance all the time. I'm constantly balancing on I feel like in some ways, some days I'm on a tightrope, and other days I'm on a more stable platform of balancing the anxiety and the worry about things and about conditions and people, and my desire for people to do better and be happier and be able to live a just life like we were all kind of promised. And as we see in the movies and are told in our stories all the time, right? The balance between the reality of the world and the hope I have for how we could be better, you know? And then that balanced with, you know, pulling in the flippers and having and my more personal views about my real life around me, you know. Yeah, that'll do it on that. What do you consider the most overrated virtue? Piety. I thought about that one too for a little bit. I was like, what's, you know, this sort of submission to a supernatural force or power or something. I'm just, I almost hold that sort of thing in contempt. Overrated virtue, you know, this sort of faux godliness or you know, fake faith, you know, that's considered a virtue among way too many people, right? Because it's so hypocritical and so unnatural to us. We're flawed, but we're not sinners. We're not saints, we're not sinners, we are human. And it bothers me, these false standards and hypocritical sort of virtue signaling that goes on with people. I really hate that. Yeah, I hate that a lot. So I think this kind of fake virtuism, you know, is highly overrated. On what occasion do you lie? Okay, I'll admit it. Social occasions, you know. But lying is a strong word because I really do go out of my way to not lie. I would, in fact, one of the, you know, sort of mantras or mottos that I have in my life is that I would rather live with an uncomfortable truth than a pleasing lie. I used to post that on my Facebook page all the time, right? Because I thought it was an important thing to say, because it's how I think of things. So I really go out of my way to not lie. You know, but sometimes when people ask you personal things about their appearance, you know, or about, you know, does this make me look fat, you know, that kind of thing. No, of course not. You look great, you know. Because the fact of the matter is that I do think my friends are great, and my wife is great, right? And she looks great, and she sounds great, right? And she gets, you know, she for example, you know, I think we all know this with our domestic partners, right? We you know, they get a little self-conscious and a little over-critical about themselves, and so you know, maybe say words to them that maybe aren't 100% true, but they aren't, you know, a harmful, malicious lie either. You know, that kind of human gray area, I think, is what I think of with this. And those are the occasions where I will maybe be bending some objective truth a little bit. I will say that there have been times when I have lied to keep the peace. Not domestically, because Mel and I don't have that kind of relationship. And not with my family, because we just don't talk about the things that are going to cause trouble. We've learned already through the conflicts. There's some things that maybe we just shouldn't go open those doors. Let's keep these other doors that we do have common ground on. Let's keep these wide open. I'm thinking of, you know, my mom or my brother, right, or my dad. You know, there's absolutely no reason for me to talk to my dad harshly about Scientology. He maintains Scientology beliefs, and I ain't going there. So we just kind of keep that door closed, and I try to focus on the things that we have common ground on, right? But with strangers or acquaintances or other people who maybe I'm seeing there's going to be a problem or there is a problem, you know, maybe I'll, for the sake of keeping the peace, and no, it's no problem at all. It's fine. You know, you're good. I'm good. Whatever, right? I try not to do that on things that are really important, and just on social kind of stuff. So those kind of occasions, right? But I would never, ever compromise my integrity on things that are truly important to me, especially when it comes to human rights, civil rights, liberties, right? Cult stuff, mind control shit. I'm unbendable on that. Unbendable. Okay. Question 10. What do you most dislike about your appearance? At this point, I'm being completely honest with you guys actually about all these questions. You can't really see it because you know, I'm always facing the camera, but I'm going bald back here, and I hate it. Hate it. I grew up with like thick, bushy, you know, kind of spiky hair. It was awesome. It was one of my favorite characteristics of myself, was my big, thick mane, you know. And now it's going away, and I hate it. 11. Which living person do you most despise? This is a tough one because I try not to despise anybody in that, in terms of hatred or despising people. You know, it's easy to say, you know, Trump or something, right? But I don't despise the man. I really, if you asked me for my human feelings about people like Trump, it's pity. It's a sort of sadness that that person had to have the life they had to come out the way that they came out, and has to be the way they are. It makes me sad because it's like a tragedy. That's how I think about people like that. At least in my more lucid, rational moments. I get mad like everybody else does, of course. But I'm not mad right this second, right? And so I'm not like, rah, rah, rah. And even then, I'm mad about what they're doing, not despising the individual, right? I really try hard to separate action from identity with people because when in the cult world, if you can't do that, you're going to hate an awful lot of people, and hate just rips you up inside, So I try to separate those things. I guess I'll just say that there's a couple people in the world who have said and done things in my direction that I can't get past. Maybe in the YouTube world. I don't want to name names when it comes to that. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole of nonsense. So I'm not going to lie about it, but I'll just say I still feel anger at the lingering effects and consequences of careless, malicious hatred thrown my way with bundles of lies added to it. It's not something you easily move on from, So I still have a lot of anger in that direction, but I've learned to live with it and not put all my attention on it and not let it control my thinking or my actions or how I go about my day to day. It's not a daily thought that I have to suppress. I've moved on from it to that degree, but it still rankles, because it was just all so stupid and unnecessary. What is the quality you most like in a man? There's another one for the next one will be for women. So I'm gonna talk about men here, or manliness, because I do see a differentiation between the masculine and the feminine, right? The men and women. They are different, and as a species, they're supposed to be. We're supposed to be different. Biological differences. Psychological differences because of those biological differences, right? Different goals, purposes, whatever, right? Which is not to say that we don't share a lot of common ground and can't do a lot of the same things, but we can't do all the same things. So when I think about men, I think about bravery, I think about security, I think about integrity, I think about a willingness to put themselves forward to fight and defend. These are things I admire in people or like in men, right? Is that they are willing to assume that role to some degree or another, right? Protector, defender, resource gatherer. Again, it's not to say that women can't share some of those characteristics, but if we're going to differentiate these two things, this is the direction my mind goes. I don't think I'm thinking in, classic stereotypes. I think I'm thinking in the way I've described it, right? In terms of the biology and psychology of our species. We got millions of years of this, right? And I think about us as animals. I don't think about us as as spiritual entities in a physical container, I think of, this is it. This is what you get. So maybe there's a spark of life or some kind of energy or something connected with that is undetected or unknown. But I don't think about that, about life that way. I used to. As a Scientologist, I thought about spiritual beings very, as genderless, life force. And I had a very, very different idea about people as a result of that thinking, but I don't think that way anymore. So, so the quality you most like in a man is, the ability and willingness to be a man, to man up, to not in a toxic way. In fact, let me comment on that real fast because I was thinking about this just in the last 24 hours from some stuff I saw on Reddit. Actually, I saw this video of one of these alpha boot camp guys telling his people, right, that he had just spent boot camp time with, and I think this is a recent development in the manosphere, which, as you can see, I sort of make these faces because that's not what I think of when I think of manly men. I think that's toxic nonsense, right? But here's why I think it is because it's not contextualized. One of the ways that we're failing in our young men is we're not teaching them context. We're teaching them consistency in a weird way. You need to be a manly man. You need to be an alpha male, right? This whole Andrew Tate, Joe Rogan bullshit. And you're supposed to always be that way. Under any context, any circumstance, any situation you're in, you're supposed to dominate and you're supposed to make those around you submit. That's fucking bullshit, right? The quality that I admire in a man is a willingness to dominate his enemies. Those who do wrong in the world, those bad people in the world, those are the people you go dominate and make submit and make them stop being bad people. But you don't go home to the people who love you, who you've managed to somehow carve out a little bit of a human relationship with, and they actually love you and you love them. Those aren't the people you dominate. Those aren't the people you make submit to you. That's ridiculous. That is toxic behavior. To be this, warrior of the family, the guy who holds the umbrella against the darts of Satan. Remember all that bullshit? Comes out of the Duggar IBLP, Bill Gothard stuff, right? And this is rife throughout the evangelical world, this purity culture and all this other nonsense. That's not being a man, that's being an asshole. And the people who love you and you love them, that's not how you treat them. And that's what I mean by contextualizing the behavior. You're being a man in that situation is a defender and a protector and a resource provider and a source of strength and love. That's how I see it. And that's what I admire, and when I see it in men, is the ability to contextualize and make differentiations in how they act, so that it's appropriate for the circumstances. And this I think is a lesson that somehow isn't being taught. Context isn't hard to teach, but you do have to do it. This video I mentioned before about this alpha boot camp guy, he was telling his graduates, now look guys, when you go home, you've now changed, you've come through this whole thing and you're like this manly man, but you go home and start barking orders to your wife, they're going to, your kids, they're going to wonder who the hell you are and what's wrong with you, right? Yeah, duh. Yeah, that's the kind of contextualizing I'm talking about is, yeah, don't take that shit home with you, and don't do that to your friends. Don't do that to people that don't deserve to be at the receiving end of nonsense and awfulness, right? But that lack of clarity and context is a problem in our world. I don't know if I would be drawn to an Iron Man Scientology movie. Sorry, I just got distracted by Iron Man because that's right up my alley, right? I mean, Tony Stark. Now, there's a guy I can admire, right? Anyway, go ahead and send me whatever you're going to send me. That's cool. Okay, now, as far as what is the quality you most like in a woman? The willingness and desire to be a woman, you know, not try to be a man. And, you know, and vice versa, right? I don't know. I don't want to be labeled as some kind of traditionalist. I think I'm a contextualist. I like to think in terms of context. I don't want to lay stereotypes on people, but women are the ones who have the kids, and women are the ones who raise the kids. And well, both of the parents really ideally are the ones who raise the kids, but the mom has got that biological connection with the kids that the guy just isn't gonna have. You just can't. I mean, you literally created the child. You know what I mean? I envy it in some ways because it's just such a connection. You know, I mean, to this day, I still feel closer to my mom, way closer to my mom than I do to my dad. And I don't think that's because I have some, you know, deeply effeminate side. I think it's because my mom is somebody I've been connected with, you know, literally my entire life, you know, since before I was born. And and that's how I think about, you know, the difference between men and women is, you know, at the biological and psychological levels. And so, you know, it makes total sense to me that women are, you know, generally speaking, more caring and more nurturing and more, you know, compassionate and that kind of thing. And I admire that. I love that about women. I really, really do. I have needed that so many times from my wife. I can't go to my male friends and get the kind of understanding and the kind of compassionate support that I can get from the women in my life, right? Between my wife, my mom, and my female friends, it's a very, very different thing. And I wouldn't expect to get the same level of compassion from my male friends. I just wouldn't. You know, it's not to say that there's nothing there. Of course there is. That's why we're friends. But it's different. And I think it's supposed to be different. And that's the quality that I most like in a woman is that compassion and that ability to connect and understand and care. At a psychological level, at least, I really, really, really appreciate that, regardless of what their job is or what they're doing in life or what their hobbies are or anything. This is separate from all of that. I think. Oh, interesting, Joe. You thought this was a fair game video. That's funny. That's funny. Huh. Maybe I'll have to rethink the title. Who is Chris Shelton anyway? Maybe I'm just beating Scientology to the punch. They never did do a Who is Chris Shelton site. You know, the only website I have against me from Scientology is part of the Aftermath hate website. They didn't do a dedicated Who is Chris Shelton thing. I'm not a big enough fish in this pond for them to go after me that way, and I'm okay with that. I've always have been. I'm not in this to be at the receiving end of Scientology's bullshit. Okay, which words or phrases do you most overuse? Wow. I know that's the one. I know if that's the top of the list. Wow. God, I say that way too much. I used to say it a lot more. There was a point I think I became self-aware enough to try to pull back on saying that all the time. If you go to my earlier videos and stuff, it's just everywhere. Especially in those interviews I would do with people, just wow. Ugh. I cringe a little thinking about that. Yeah. I do tend to overuse stuff. Cyclically, I'll cycle through phrases or funny things. I think again I've learned socially to draw back on that a little bit. But you know how you'll have that, you know the person in your life maybe who will find something funny and then they'll say it everywhere over and over and over again, right? You know, I had this running joke for a long time until people just got so sick of it. Of when I would go out to eat with them, it would be like, "Oh yeah, no, I don't want gluten free. I want a bowl of gluten. Can you bring me a bowl? I'd like a side of gluten, please." You know, haha. It's not even that funny of a joke, right? But I overuse the hell out of that. Yeah, in the year of our Lord. There you go. Got me. Yep. Okay. Who or what is the greatest love of your life? By far, it is Mel. By far, my wife. Yeah, my first wife was definitely not. I dodged a bullet in a way, in being declared suppressive, because I had fallen madly in love with this woman out in Minnesota. And she is a Scientologist, of course, and I met her at the church, and her whole family are Scientologists. And I moved out. I left the Sea Org, and I wanted to be with her, you know. And I thought that was going to be the thing. And you know, she wasn't there for me when the chips were down and things crashed and the pressure came on from Scientology. She did exactly what Scientologists do, right? Out of there. No, Benson's not the love of my life, but Benson is very, very, very much, very, very important to me. Very important to me. But Benson doesn't hold a candle to, I mean, how I feel about Benson is very, very strong, but it's a candle to the bonfire of how I feel about my wife. She is everything to me, and has met me at that level over and over again. There's no need to prove anything between us anymore. We've been through the 7-year, all the bullshit, all the stuff you go through, all the ups and downs and the power plays and control bullshit and the stuff you do in relationships. We've been through all that, and we navigated it, and we survived it. We survived being together full time during COVID. She worked from home, I worked from home, and we were together all the time for years, about 3 straight years, right, during all that COVID bullshit. And a lot of marriages fell apart, and we were stronger for it. And I feel sorry for people who can't or can't commit or won't have the investment to, that it takes to have that relationship. It's work, but it's so worth it, because when they're there for you when you need it and no one else is, you really get why we couple up and why we need that. And yet be strong, independent people, right? Mel and I were both strong, independent people when we came together. We were not filling a hole for each other, in our personalities or in our identities. We knew who we were. We had a good, strong sense of that individually, and then we could team up and take on life together. And that's how we define or think about our relationship, is it's a team. And you know what I mean? And that's a different thing from having some empty space inside and I need this other person to fill it, and if they go away I'll be empty again. I don't think that's healthy. But again, that's my take on things, right? But it's work. Yeah. But it's Mel. Yeah, that's the answer to the question. When and where were you happiest? I can't believe how fast time flies. I can't believe it. It's felt like it's been about 20 minutes. And it's been twice that long. When and where were you happiest? The thing that pops to mind is my wedding. But of course I was just sitting here talking about Mel, so maybe that's why. There have been a lot of times in my life of deep, significant happiness. Getting my degree from Salford was peak, so peak. I mean, what I had to do to get that degree, the amount of work and the number and the amount of literal blood, sweat, and tears, so much work. You know, it's not ego that has me putting the MSc after my name. It's accomplishment. It's, you know, I mean, I don't know, maybe some people might think it's prideful, but it's just, for me, it's self-acknowledgement of how much fucking work it took, and the happiness that brings me and brought me was huge, huge. Oh man, meeting my kid. Yeah, all three of these. Yeah, you know, Mel, Josh, spending that, going to Australia and spending time with him. Yeah, real happiness there. And the happiest moment was when I was leaving, and he said some things to me. Yeah, they were really personal, so it was peak. Yeah. Which talent would you most like to have? I wish I could communicate better, especially to younger people. I was saying recently, you know, that if I was an element, I'd be boron, right? Because I'm just kind of this boring guy. I have information and education to offer to people, but I'm not an exciting person, and I'm not particularly interesting to people at that level. And I wish I was, because it's a talent to have that. And I wish I had it, so that I could communicate the things that I'm desperate to get the world to understand to more people. That's hard. Yeah. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be? That I wasn't so self-conscious and hard on myself all the time. My wife says that is my fatal flaw. I'm way too hard on myself, and I can see that. I'm constantly criticizing myself daily for not getting enough done, for not putting enough out for you guys, for not, you know, getting my book done yet. You know, it's all work related, you know, kind of stuff mainly. Just so focused on that activity in my life, and I wish I wasn't so self-critical about it. It'd be nice if I could get the work done without berating myself about not getting enough work done. That would be really cool. I don't know how to do that. It's so deep in me. I don't know how to change that, but it would be really cool if I could. Oh, play an instrument. Yeah, not so much. It'd be fun. It'd be fun to play an instrument, but it's not. Yeah, no, it's not the talent I want to have. Okay, 19. What do you consider your greatest achievement? Finishing the RPF was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. So in that sense, it was an achievement. But I think getting myself out of Scientology and doing so by waking myself up through a slow process of critical thinking is my greatest achievement. If I look at my life and like, what did I do that, like, wow, that was kind of cool, you know? I don't think about the RPF as like, oh, that was kind of cool. I think about it as, you know, the most difficult hill I ever had to climb. But achievement is, yeah, I think getting myself out of what I now describe and what John Atack has described and Steve Hassan has described as the most intense and damaging psychological operation to ever have been put together against people. Scientology, right? The multi-layeredness of the mind control in Scientology is staggering in what it does to people. Staggering. And I did that myself. No, there was no intervention. There was nobody talking me out of it ever. Not once. You know? So I thought that was pretty cool. I was pretty happy about that. 20, if you were to die and come back as a person or a thing, what would it be? It's sure as hell not a cockroach. Thought about this one a bit. You know, I thought, wouldn't it be fun to be a whale or a dolphin or something? It's not a dream I have. I don't really think about this a lot because I don't really think about coming back. Not anymore. I don't think I have it in me this time around to be a philosopher, but I think that would be an aspiration if I could come back. You know, what would it be that I would come back as, right? That has a lot of appeal to me. It's a whole different way of thinking about the world and about knowledge and people and the interaction of us in life and stuff. And it's a road I'm not on, but I feel adjacent to it sometimes, you know. And I feel a kind of envy for people who can dedicate themselves mentally to a world like that, to a philosophical approach. That's what's on my mind right now. Yeah. All right. 21. Where would you most like to live? I would love to live somewhere in Central Western Europe or Central Europe, maybe bordering East and West, right? So I could go to all of those places. If I had travel goals or experiential goals for my life, it would be to see and be in those places as more than just a tourist, but to spend real significant periods of time and really, you know, really dive into the experience of the various cultures and mostly the history. I'm a history nerd, I'm not a history date time guy. I don't have it all worked out that way, but the flow of history is fucking fascinating to me. And you just don't get the kind of ancient history that I'm interested in here in the States. You know, we can go back a few hundred years here culturally, and we can maybe go back, a couple thousand years if you go to Native American archaeological sites or older sites or something, right? But what the Middle East has to offer, what Europe has to offer is significantly different, right? And I'd really love to experience that. What is your most treasured possession? Hmm. I have a sword. And I really like it because it's not a dress-up sword and it's not a play sword. It's a real sword. I could get it sharpened. I haven't. Got it at a Ren fair from a guy who literally forged it, and I love it. I just have it. I don't play with it. I don't. It's just there. I do like swords. I like sword play. I'm not skilled, but I'm not unskilled. I could pick it up and hurt somebody with it effectively. But yeah, I think that's my most treasured possession. Things I didn't think I would say. That was that one. Yeah, 23. What do you regard as the lowest depth of misery? I have a couple thoughts on this one. Because I think about people in abject poverty, like, you know, like deep poverty, and I hate that exists as a condition all over the world. And I think that would be miserable. I think that would be a miserable existence, right? To have the barest of survival as your day-to-day goal, right? The barest of survival. But I also think about, being in a concentration camp or Abu Ghraib or something like that, right? And the fact we have that here in America now is disgusting. So, being imprisoned, solitary confinement. Yeah. Because that's crazy making. That'll drive you nuts. Absolutely whack. And it doesn't take a long time. That would be the worst of the worst of the worst, I think, for me, as I think about it. What is your favorite occupation? I think my answer to this is movie director. For some period of time, I thought Lego engineer, but I really don't think that would hold a candle to making movies. It would be fun. It'd be really, really, really fun to just be somebody who could, do Lego shit all day. But I think that would have a time limit, But making movies is a cyclic project to project to project kind of thing. It's huge. It's a massive project engineering management job. It's a person to person job. It's a creative job. Whether you're doing fiction or nonfiction, whether you're doing documentary work like Ken Burns, or you're doing, you're a Spielberg or something, right? There's so much There's so many tools you have to have in the toolbox and so many skills you have to bring. And I think that would be a blast. I just think it would be so much fun. And I only got a little tiny taste of it when I was in high school, and I directed a video production in my senior year. And it was just one of the most fun things I've ever done. Hands down. I mean, I'm not even like just hands down. And video editing and writing are akin to that in a lot of ways. Yeah, in terms of creation, right? What I do now is very, very akin to it. But I mean, like on a bigger scale, like you know, real movies, right? I think that's a favorite for me. Favorite. That would be like my favorite. That would be my jam. You know, I'm not saying it's the best job in the world. I'm not saying it's the job everybody should have, or it's the most valuable job or anything like that, because it's none of those things. But it is my favorite. So that's my answer, and I'm sticking to it. What is your most marked characteristic? I'm not totally sure what this question, I've been chewing on this one because I'm not exactly sure what this question is asking. I'm just going to check. Marked, having one or more distinguishing marks clearly defined and evident, noticeable. Okay, pretty much kind of what I was thinking. So my most marked characteristic, I think, I don't know what you guys would say, or what my friends or my family would say. But I think it's my worry about the world and about people. It's there all the time. And I talk about it a lot. And yeah, I think it's that. Not necessarily my best characteristic and not necessarily my favorite one. But I think it's my most marked one. And yeah, and not just in a general sense, but on an individual level too. You know, I care about people and individuals, and I just want everybody to get along and succeed. I know it's a fantasy, but it just persists with me. What do you most value in your friends? Friendship, trust, decency, respect. And with those things comes, you know, not lying to each other, you know what I mean? Being honest, being open, being willing to challenge, but not in hostility, or, you know, and curiosity. That's a real strong one for me. I like people who are curious about things. I don't like people who are incurious, right? Who feel they've got it all figured out or don't care to know. I don't like people like that. I just don't. I feel that it's important to be curious about the world and want to know more and want to grow and want to progress and want to be better today than I was yesterday, right? I want that in my friends. And of course I don't necessarily have that in all of my friends, but I gravitate towards those kinds of people. Who are your favorite writers? It's trite and not a great answer if I say something like Stephen King. You know, he's certainly somebody whose books I've read more of than any other author. But I also think about, like, people whose works have stuck with me. Dickens, The Tale of Two Cities is a book I read in high school that I read 2 more times after high school that stuck with me so hard because the final bit of the sacrifice, of it's a far, far greater thing I do than I've ever done before. It's a far better resting place I go to than I've ever known. I don't know if that's the exact quote, but man, that still hits hard for me. Hard. I have not read some of the great authors that I want to. I haven't read Dostoevsky yet. I haven't read, Victor Hugo. I haven't read... who one of my... Steinbeck. Steinbeck is one of my favorite writers. So simple, and yet so powerful. Not Grapes of Wrath. I didn't read Grapes of Wrath. It was Of Mice and Men. That's another one, right? Oh, just hits you in the feels. Powerful writing, and yet simple writing. Not complicated, but powerful. Just a wordsmith. Yeah. Love Steinbeck. Carl Sagan. As a writer, there are few books that have been as useful, educational, and straight up life-changing to me as The Demon-Haunted World. Right? Carl Sagan wrote that book, and it's just a masterclass in critical thinking. And it changed my life. So I'll put him on the list for sure. Who is your hero of fiction? I grew up in the era of the heyday of Lucas and Spielberg. So cinematically, immediately I'm going to, Indiana Jones and Luke Skywalker and, these virtuous characters who were men on a mission and they were men of integrity. They don't bend. They get the job done, but they're not assholes about it, right? They care. They're caring people. I guess it's this lifetime kind of heroes of fiction, because I look in the past and I don't connect quite as closely with classical mythology, because they're representations of other times and other cultures, Odysseus and Hector and the other guy, Achilles, right? That's some of the Greek, heroes and stuff. They're manly men. They're men on a mission and all that, but they don't quite connect with me the same way. There's things about them I admire, of course, and the endless hero, sort of trope is something that has always appealed to me. Yeah, but I guess I have to go back to my own inspirations and childhood heroes, because those are the ones that kind of, at least for me, make the most sense as sticking with you for the longest and being the most inspirational. And I guess those are the ones. Yeah. Which historical figure do you most identify with? This is a funny question. I saw this and I didn't give it a whole lot of thought, because I don't think I identify with too many people in history. Man, I really intended for this video to be shorter. for some reason, maybe it's just through sayings and writings. Marcus Aurelius comes to mind. I'll say that. Who are your heroes in real life? I've named them. You know, Mr. Rogers, Carl Sagan. Thinking people, caring, compassionate, thinking people. First responders as a class of people. I used to admire the police as a class, but I don't anymore. That's not part of the picture for me. Life-saving first responders are heroes in every sense of the word to me. People have dedicated their life to that job, and the work they do is heroic. Heroic. EMTs, doctors, firefighters, nurses, you know, those folks, the sacrifices they make, the work that it takes to become them. Heroic. What are your favorite names? Honestly, and this might sound weird, I don't know if it will or not, but I really have a thing for Greek female names of classic antiquity, right? Persephone. I just think Persephone is one of the baddest ass names ever. Andromeda, you know, like what? Where do these names come from? I love these names, you know. Actually, not just female names. I mean, Agamemnon, Achilles. I mean, these are names I just go, wow, that's a cool ass name. I don't know what it is about that, but I really, really like those names. Not that I would name my kid those names, because they're a little bit out of time, right? But they're my favorites. They really are. Okay, what is it that you most dislike? Of course, I was going to say vegetables first. But again, I think it comes down to what do I most dislike is cruelty, inhuman cruelty, you know, true narcissism, which is what, you know, people like Donald Trump embody, personify. Just pure greed and selfishness at the expense of anybody else or anything else, right? Just pure greed and ego. I can't stand it. It really makes me sick to my stomach when I think about human beings who can only think about themselves. I think it's a travesty of humanity that such people exist. And I really, really dislike that. What is your greatest regret? I think my greatest regret is that I didn't leave Scientology earlier, when I had opportunities to do so, and I didn't take them because I was afraid. I knew it was bad. I did not have any idea till I got out how bad, but I knew it was bad for me, but I stuck with it for the mission, for the purpose of it, right? Because I was martyring myself. And I knew I was doing that, but I was doing it anyway. Because I felt that the mission and the fact that I believed in my heart of hearts that I was going to live again. And so the sacrifice of one lifetime or two or three or four for the greater good of literally salvaging everybody, I mean, it's not even a question, right? It's utilitarian ethics. It's greatest good. I mean, the equation is obvious. So under those circumstances, in that context, I was willing to make those sacrifices until I couldn't anymore, until it was just obvious that what we were doing was not creating that future. And it was all about money and lies and bullshit. And then it was, I'm out of here, you know. But I wish I could have hit that point earlier, you know. I don't regret the RPF because, again, what I said earlier, but it still would have been nice if I could have hit that point and left Scientology before I had to go through all that. Okay, 2 more and we're done. How would you like to die? In my sleep. What is your motto? I tattooed it on myself. It's chaos, be kind. That is my motto. I don't always practice it. I know that. I'm human. I got emotions and reactions just like everybody else, but that's why I put it here. And the other one that still has to go over here, why so serious? One day I'm going to get that done. And there we go. All right. So that was the show. Thank you very much for coming around and watching me babble on here. So thanks for listening. Thanks for being interested enough in me and my work to care enough to watch all of this. I hope it was interesting to you, and I hope you feel like you know me as a person a little bit better now. That was the point. Probably won't do a whole lot more like this, you know, but I thought, why not? Let's do it. All right, so I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.